Now that we got our files and routes migrated, let's start handling user input when that form here is submitted. And for that, we need what in our server-side code? We want a post route. We want to handle incoming post requests because, as we learned, if a form is submitted with the intention of that data to be stored on the server, we want to send a post request so that the data can also neatly be merged with the request body. And therefore, somewhere here in app.js, the exact position does not matter, I will add another route, but this time for incoming post requests by using the post method on app. Now, the path which we expect here is totally up to you, but I will actually use recommend again, which I did already use up here for get. Now I'll use it again here for post, and therefore I'll actually grab this post route and move its definition close to the get route, not because it's required, but because it shows us as a developer that the two routes are kind of connected. And you might wonder here if it's allowed to use the same path for two different routes. And the answer is yes, if you use different HTTP methods, get and post. It would not be valid to define another get route here. I mean, you could do that, but this code here would actually never execute because this route already handles the incoming request and sends back a file. So this here would be redundant. Your routes are evaluated from top to bottom in that file, and hence this would be skipped. But for a post request, this get route will not become active, and hence this handler here would actually then handle this incoming request. So yes, this is something we can do. And therefore now here, we again want to parse the incoming request data and then store it. And for the moment, I'll again store it in a file because we don't know yet how to work with databases. Now, you did learn that in order to use incoming data, we got this body property on the request object. But you also learned that it will only be populated if we added some middleware to this Express app that actually tells Express to look into incoming requests and try to extract incoming data. And therefore, we should add that middleware. We typically do that at the beginning of this file, just as we do it for the static files. And then here after or in front of the static file middleware, doesn't matter. You can use Express URL encoded and pass this object, this configuration object to it, where you set extended to false, just as we did it before. Now with that, the incoming request data should be parsed, and in this post route, we now have access to it. Now, if we have a look at recommend HTML, at the form we find there, then we see that in there, we got a couple of inputs. And they all already have a name attribute, name, address, cuisine, website, and description, and we can extract the data by these keys, therefore, in our backend code. We'll also have to come back to the form element and configure this correctly, but for the moment, let's go back to app.js and extract that data correctly. For example, the name, which was the first field we have in there for the restaurant name. I'll store the data stored in that field in a constant named restaurant name. And then I'll continue like this for my other fields as well to also store the address and so on. Or do I? Let's think about this again. We in the end want to extract all that data to then store it together as one piece of data in a JSON file, let's say, as we did it in the previous section. Now, if that is our goal, to store the data as a whole somewhere, then we don't even need to extract all those different keys here. Instead, we could just store request body as a whole, and that's what I'll do here. I'll add a restaurant constant and just store request body in it. And then I want to store this restaurant value, so this body object which we have here, in a JSON file which we have yet to create. So that's what I'll do next. I'll create this file and I'll store it in a data folder as I did it before and name it restaurants.json. Again, in there, I'll add this empty array, the empty square brackets, so that we can then read that file and add stored or submitted restaurants into this array and store the updated array back into this JSON file. So, therefore here, back in this post recommend route, I now want to open that file, edit the data, and store it back. For that, we first of all need our file path again with path join as we did it before, with underscore dir name, then the data folder, and then the file name, which was restaurants.json, like this. And with that file path, we can open that file and read it. For this, we need this file system package, which is built into Node.js, which we also used before already. Require it like that. And then here in this post route, we can now use this file system to read the content with read file sync. Again, the sync part is important for now. And then we pass file path to that. And this will then give us our file data. Now, as mentioned, even though that data might look like an array to us, technically it's just some text. And we need to translate this into a JavaScript array with help of this JSON parse helper, which we also used before. So we got our stored restaurants here, which we can get by using JSON parse on that raw file data. And then we can use the stored restaurants to add this new restaurant that was submitted here. So for that, we can use stored restaurants and push this new restaurant into this array. And then we want to save this restaurants array. So for that, we want to again use the file system package, this time with write file sync. Again, use the file path from before, but the data which I now want to store is this stored restaurants array, again converted back to text in that JSON format by using JSON stringify here. And then we pass stored restaurants as a value to stringify. Now that should store the data in the JSON file. We of course still want to send back a response as well. And for this, of course, we use the response object, but the question is, what do we now send back? In the end, I want to send back this confirm page, but we're now going to do something new. Before, in the previous course section, I did indeed just send back a HTML response. But this had one disadvantage. It meant that if the user ever tried to reload the confirmation page, he or she would get this warning or this question whether that form data should be submitted again. And that's not the behavior I want to have here. Also because I don't want users to accidentally click on yes in this prompt and submit the same data again, which would cause the same restaurant to be stored again. Therefore, instead of sending back some HTML content here as part of the post route, I'd like to redirect users so that once this post request was sent and handled, I tell the browser that the browser should switch to a different page. And we can send such an instruction to the browser from the server by using the built-in redirect method, which is offered by Express on this response object. And redirect takes a string which simply contains the path we want to redirect to. And in my case, that's /confirm, so that I do redirect to this path down there. So that's now how we can redirect once the data was submitted. And with all of that, we now just have to go to the recommend HTML file and configure this form correctly. And you learned that we do this on this form element with help of the action and the method attributes. Action is the path, method is get or post, and of course here we want to enter the data that we did now configure in app.js. The path is /recommend, so that's our action here, and the method of course is post. With that, if we now save everything again, if I reload this recommend page here in the browser, let's try submitting this. Now for this, we first of all have to enter something because I added some validation HTML attributes. And therefore, I'll add some data here like test, test street 5, test city. Now let's say this is Italian cuisine. The website is https mytest.com, which probably exists, but I haven't looked it up. It's just some dummy data, of course. And here I'll say it's awesome. With that, if I now click share restaurant, we go to this confirm page. We can now also reload this page without getting this warning because we redirected. And you see that we redirected because the path here changed in the URL bar. And if we have a look at restaurants.json, we see the data was stored there. You can also press the auto format shortcut here to have that in a more readable way. So that's the data I entered. It was submitted and stored successfully, and that's therefore all looking great. Now let's try another restaurant just to be safe. Here I'll name this test 2 in test street 10, test city 2. This is Indian, let's say. And then here I have my great test.com. It's also amazing is what I'll enter here. Share this restaurant, it works. And now if I reformat this again, we see that second restaurant was stored as well. So that is all working. Now, of course, the next step is to load that data and present it when we visit browse restaurants. And that will now be a major step forward because that will now introduce a brand new topic, generating HTML code dynamically with help of so-called template files.